Hello, and thanks for joining this podcast. We're running a new series of podcasts to accompany our Coffee Break podcast series. In the How We Work podcast, we'll be taking a look at some of the projects Shaw Consulting have been working on. I'm joined today by Director Chris Shaw to discuss an ICT Strategy development project the team recently completed for development charity Practical Action. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Steve.
So, Chris, first of all, could you start by explaining who Practical Action are and what was the project that you were taken on for?
Yeah, sure. So Practical Action, they're an international development agency. And what they do is they help people who are in poverty or suffering from poverty to acquire the skills and training to manage their own needs more effectively. So that might be putting in wells or helping them to build homes or communities, things like this. So it's where the community might not have the skills. So the Practical Action go out, run these projects, and then transfer the skills to the people in these communities so they can be more self-sufficient. So our strategy was to look at how their IT systems support these projects that they run, because they run these projects across the world with different teams of people, and they needed a strategy that allowed them to use the best technology to run these projects in the best way and be able to communicate with everybody from any location.
Okay, that sounds like a really interesting organisation to work with. So what exactly did you and the team do?
So we were commissioned to draft an IT strategy, and that was really focusing on what systems they had currently, where those systems were running from, what the business needed to be able to operate effectively. And they were working in many different locations. So we had to take account of what infrastructure those countries had from an IT perspective and how they could then have their IT systems work across those infrastructures in a secure way. We engaged with the IT team. We looked at the future options for the technology, and then we looked at what they could do in the short, the medium, and the long term. And we detailed what the costs were for acquiring that technology or for running that project, what resources they would need from the internal IT team, where they might need some additional support from external organizations, and where the business needed to engage with them to ensure that the projects delivered the outcomes the business needed.
And through the strategy development and the actions that you took, what were you able to ultimately achieve for Practical Action?
Well, they had quite a traditional IT infrastructure environment. They had the head office where a number of their IT systems were running from, but then they had also local instances of infrastructure in different countries. And they had different IT people in those countries running those systems. What we identified that there was an opportunity to consolidate a lot of IT infrastructure and move it to the cloud. They did have some good systems. They were using Microsoft Dynamics as their CRM solution, and they were partway through implementing that and rolling it out to all of the different locations that they operate across. But some of the areas which were causing them more operational overheads were around that underlying infrastructure and making sure it was as secure as it could be. You can only invest so much in IT security when you're running your own on-premise infrastructures, whereas when you're moving things to the cloud, you've got the wraparound services, these big players like Microsoft or Amazon, AWS, which really ensure that you've got as good as possible IT environment and secure IT environment. We also looked at the capability of the IT team. Did they have the capability and the skills to be able to deliver the strategy? And we made recommendations on what was needed there and what governance arrangements needed to be in place to ensure that the strategy continued to deliver the needs of the business, and any changes that were brought in during the life of the strategy were going through a proper and robust change management process.
And finally then, Chris, what was the project's kind of final outcome?
Well, they took what we did They presented that to the senior management team, and there was a new chief executive coming into the organization. So they wanted to ensure that they had a clear plan, which the new chief executive could look at, could see that they'd taken into account what the business needed, and it could see a direct link of how IT could actually facilitate the organization in achieving their goals and ambitions. So they've got this fit for purpose strategy now for the next 3 years that's going to help them deliver the fantastic projects that they do across the world.
That's great. Thanks so much, Chris. As ever, a really interesting insight into how you and the team operate in partnership with your clients. Looking forward to joining you again when we take another look at some of the Shaw projects. All podcasts are available on Shaw social media channels. Thanks for listening, everyone.